So, welcome everyone to another exciting week of our Mission Matters Twitter Spaces. Once a week, we put together a dialogue, bringing together an executive, a celebrity, an athlete, or an entrepreneur who's going to share their background, their story of how they got to where they are, and also what they're currently working on right now. Everyone has a mission, and ours is to amplify their stories so that we can inspire and educate future generations. For those of you tuning in that haven't heard of Mission Matters before, Mission Matters is a multimedia platform focused on the needs of entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. And on the back end, we're also a book publishing company, a podcast agency, a digital marketing agency, and a PR agency. And so we help a variety of entrepreneurs and executives, share their stories to get it to their right audiences. And so with that, my counterpart, Adam, here is going to initiate, and we'll pass the baton off to you, Adam. But before I do that, I want to introduce Charles Smith, and I want to read off his bio. So Charles D. Smith is a cultural ambassador, bridging people, cultures, and ideas. Smith played in the NBA for nearly a decade, and then he was founder and CEO of New Media Tech Corp. Smith's hard-driving work ethic has played out in the corporate world at Mediacom. He drove strategy and directed a team that created value for talent through social media services and brand partnerships. He became a team representative for the National Basketball Players Association, and then as first vice president, a position specifically created for him by the NBPA. Add to this his role in working with two other NBA players, he launched and the NBPA Foundation, a nonprofit to create meaningful change through the support of both charitable organizations and retired players in need. As executive director of the National Basketball Retired Players Association, he took on the bold move to restructure the organization, attempting to inspire the next generation of basketball players. Smith founded Legends Care, a foundation which specifically addressed ways to positively impact communities and youth through basketball worldwide. A former U.S. Olympian, Smith's additional honors include 30 Under 30 by Urban Profile Magazine and Top 40 Under 40 Entrepreneurs in the State of New Jersey by New Jersey Biz Magazine. Smith is a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh. He's also a participant in an executive entrepreneurs program at Stanford University and has taught entrepreneurial classes at the Learning Annex in New York City. Smith is a proud father of four sons who are all following in their dad's footsteps and is forging their path in business and entrepreneurship. So with that, Adam, let's get started.
All right. Thank you, Chirag. And Charles, great to see you here today, man. I'm glad to have you on.
Hey, great, Adam. Good to see you, Matt, Chirag, and the team.
Yeah, the team is here, and a bunch of our authors also showed up that I see on the panel as well in the audience. So Phil, Denley, Joe's even here. Come on, Joe. So just a couple of things so that everybody understands the format of how this works. So, I'll ask questions in the beginning. I'll get us started and some questions that just been on my mind for Charles. And then at some point, I'll kind of allow others to jump in and also to ask questions as well. So if you have questions you want to ask, keep those, hold them for a little bit, and then I'll definitely open up the floor and we can have some fun here. All right. So another piece of that is when you do ask a question, you definitely want to say your name in advance, just kind of a little etiquette here on Twitter, because this is going to be on our other channels as well, so people won't know exactly who's talking. So just say your name before you ask the question. All right, perfect. All right, Charles, so as I mentioned, great to have you here and great to catch up under this context. We got a lot to talk about, and I think a good place for us to start here is that, people may know you from the NBA, your work with the NBA, and maybe some of the work you've done with players. But I'm curious, in terms of the business world and the business side of things that you're doing now, like what kind of projects are you working on right now?
So currently I'm on the board for the Family Office Association, and I'm contracted with Citrin Cooperman, which is a global top 20 accounting firm, and I'm building a sports and entertainment division for the Family Office Association. And Citrin Cooperman is also looking to expand and build out their sports and entertainment department. So really what I'm doing is I put myself in a position where my own ecosystem, where I'm dealing with, still sitting in the intersection of sports, business, and technology, and within that section dealing with investments. So it's a good position to be in, because essentially it still puts me in place where I can continue to raise capital for companies as well as assist family offices in finding good deal flow.
And so I know a lot of individuals, whether it be in professional sports, they try to make that, when their career's done on that part and they're opening up another chapter of their life, many want to go the business route and to maybe go to achieve some of the things that you've been able to accomplish on that side. What are some of the things that you think have helped you excel and to make that transition, through the years to sit on a board of something like the Family Office Network?
Well, first, I was always curious. I was always an entrepreneur, even at a very young age. I started with delivering papers around my neighborhood and getting paid for it. But always an entrepreneur and always curious. When I played in the NBA, I never bought into quote unquote being an NBA player. I lived my life as normal as I could possibly be. I had a Pathfinder, even pulling up to Hollywood red carpet events and a Pathfinder, and guys in the team would laugh, but I was always comfortable within myself. And in order to be an entrepreneur, you have to be confident and comfortable within yourself, because entrepreneurship is about taking risks, mitigating your risk, but you got to be a risk taker. You have to be able to go beyond the break, and you have to have vision and the willing to execute on that vision. So there's certain traits that come along with that. And I've always had those traits even when I played. So I've always done things off the court as well.
Do you think that entrepreneurship, like you started at a young age, but for those, let's talk to maybe those, because there'll be some that are going to be watching this that are maybe earlier in their career, just getting started. Is that something that you feel that can be, taught, cultivated, and really grown over time, or do you have to kind of like be born with it?
No, it could be taught. I mean, there's different facets to being an entrepreneur. You can have ideas and ideate with people and turn them into executable ideas, which flow right into an executive summary, then into a business plan and an actual business. So there's different facets to it. I always say within being an entrepreneur, you don't really go the route alone. However, the more skill sets you add to your tool belt, the better off you'll be. But you can be with a nice team and still be an entrepreneur. The thing you just mentioned about starting at a later age in life, I think we all have that entrepreneurial bug in us. And again, what holds it back is if you're not a risk taker, because you're really laying it all on the line. You're basing it on yourself, the few people around you, that you're going to achieve the goal. And the goal might be in mind, but it takes some faith to get there. So I think everybody can do it. Those that are in corporate, it gets to a certain point when you get to a certain age or you have children, and that entrepreneurial window closes. But when you're young, and I have 4 sons, although 2 are in corporate, they're still entrepreneurs outside of their jobs and still wanting to have their own at the end of the day.
And so one of the things that you mentioned was really team and teamwork. Now I think for anybody that's played sports, that's pretty, obvious, like how important, especially in a sport like basketball. But like, what is teamwork meant to you when it comes to like business and execution?
Well, it's funny. In sports is different than teamwork in business. And I hear a lot of executives use the analogies with team and the clear differences into if you're a part of a team in sport, uh, accountability is at a very high level, meaning that the video doesn't lie. All your games are recorded. You make an error, the whole world sees. You're in practice. You better be the first one to say to your team, I made a mistake before anybody else does, because that's what it's all about. However, teamwork and accountability in corporate America is a bit different. In sports, I can lace up my shoes, look across the person, start the game off, and at the end of the day, you'll know whether I outplayed the person. There's data, there's stats. Everybody knows. Take all 3 of those into corporate. First, teamwork. A lot of people in corporate rely on others next to them to hide their indiscretions and what they're not capable of doing. And you could do that in corporate. You can't do that in sports. So there's teamwork. When you talk about accountability, people can pass the buck in their errors on direct reports on other people, and by the time you find out what transpired, the damage is done, right? So there's your accountability. So imagine if there was an executive. Do you think an executive can go all day long being recorded on all of the things that they say through the course of the day, like an athlete does when they're
Oh,
performing? It's
that'd be
different.
scary.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. So, we talk about teamwork, but really, because I've done the corporate stint and I play professionally, I realize the meaning of them are two different things when you hear people talk about teamwork.
Is there anything that you feel kind of crosses over? I like the differences, by the way. I haven't really heard exactly what you said, but when you say it the way you did, like, can you imagine if you recorded? Like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, actually, that makes a lot of sense. Are there any
I
things that
mean,
do cross over though and help maybe?
oh yeah, sure. The one thing that an athlete has, and I'll go both ways. What an athlete learns discipline, right? The repetition of what you do to become great at something. You learn from your errors very quickly. You play at it. You live life and the game at an even keel. You take your losses and wins, and you kind of stay because the very next night you're going to play again. So there's certain traits there that when you and you work your work ethic is at a very high level. So when you bring that into a corporate environment, athletes usually excel in business development, sales. Those two channels are in brand marketing, but sales and business development are where athletes really do very well in corporate. Now, when it comes to the executives, they're very skilled at a certain education or a certain trade, whereas in athletics you don't have to go to school and get a degree to be a professional athlete, but you have to have some form of training to be a C-level executive coming up along the way. And a lot of those executives, through their training, some executives have one of three forms of discipline that makes them great. It's either religious practice, military, or athletics, where they've learned the discipline along with their educational value that they bring to the table, which makes them a great executive. So there are a lot of complementary aspects to both sides when it comes to being great in both industries.
So one of the things that I kind of think about often, especially with our brand and mission matters. So we're we create a platform to give voice to others, whether in the business community that aren't always heard, and so we're really trying to be a beacon of light, if you will, to many voices out there, and a platform to get their message and of course their mission out there. So when I think about, like, as I go further in my career and our company does different things, and platform eyes and responsibilities grow as well. And then I look at and I think about the idea of giving back, and I think about and what giving back looks like. So we could use the word philanthropy, but I don't mean necessarily just philanthropy. I mean giving back in the true sense of the word. So some people, as they transition or they go on in their career, some people gather a lot of knowledge they can give back, some gather a lot of money, some gather a lot of different ways that they're an expertise that they can give back and pay it forward. Like, how does giving back, or how does that play a place in your world and maybe your vision?
Well, I've always willingly wanted to work with other athletes, entertainers, young people, really just any knowledge or information I had, always willingly wanting to share. People would ask me questions, I sit for a while and answer them, especially the youth. And I'm glad you said that, because when you talk about giving in the sports world, it's usually philanthropy. But when you look at it in the way you said that, which was well stated, you look at someone who has a certain aspect of intelligence, like a professor. We don't go to a professor and talk about philanthropy. They're giving back based on their knowledge because they're experts. And a lot of people have that ability to give back. And, as you stated, with me, that's something I do all the time. And a prime example is some of the younger athletes, college athletes, parents that are dealing with their kids. I'm always open to that dialogue when it comes to the things that I've been able to do business wise. I'm always sharing with other athletes and talking to them about the things that I achieved and the challenges that it took to get there. And so if I can do that and impact one other person behind me, that's always great. So, and I'm always into that.
Any insight into maybe how you deal with and perform under pressure? And I'll give you kind of the context. So, many of the individuals that are watching this or that'll listen to this, they're not okay, they're not going to the NBA like that type of pressure, being in front of cameras and playing a sport necessarily, but or as a professional athlete. But as their businesses grow, as their employee headcount grows, as their responsibility to make payroll, like as their responsibility to grow a company, like the pressure builds, like any kind of insight into how you've been able to manage added pressure in your life.
So, and I can answer that in a few ways. One is faith. If you really believe that things are going to work out, you just talk about payroll. You can't get rattled, and a lot of that comes from experience faith is like going to the gym and working out. I'd say you build your faith muscles over time. You go through experiences and you get through them, and you remember the challenges you have, and you continue to grow in that space. If I looked at just that one point in the past where, you know, I had my office down at 55 Broad, and it was a tech company, and there were times where we weren't meeting payroll, and I was so nervous and anxious for the staff, and what are we going to do, and we end up meeting payroll by the skin of our teeth, and then we're on for the next 2 weeks, and you just. But when I look back at it, did we ever miss payroll over a period of time where that my team wanted to quit? No, it never happened. So you learn from that, and when you're faced with that situation, you're able to handle it better. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I talked about earlier is risk. You cannot mature being an entrepreneur in business without taking risks and having some failures. You learn from those failures. The failure becomes written in pencil, and it's erasable because you've learned from it. So it's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. You have to go through that in order to understand how to deal with it over a period of time. So those are two targets that you look at that build your business acumen based on what you're doing when you go through experiences like that.
All right, so we're for everybody that will listen to this into the future. We're recording this in February 2nd of 2023. We're on the tail end of the pandemic. We got economy and a lot of uncertainty right now, and interest rates and a lot of things that are going on in the economy. Business owners are some are, let's say, varying opinions on what's next and maybe how businesses should be managed, and thoughts around that. From your standpoint, Charles, like what are some of the things that are on your mind when it comes to the business environment, going into 2023?
Well, first, you always have to make yourself very attractive and be as well rounded as possible. And when you look at it, I think global. There's one thing to have a business pedigree, but there's another thing when you're able to deal cross culturally. And I think that is so critical for anyone in our future and in business because, you know, you have so many different ethnic backgrounds and people right next door based on technology. And the more you're able to adapt to cultures and be an ambassador, and what I mean by being an ambassador is like someone willingly wanting to get to know another person through their dance, food, their culture, their music, whatever it is that you willingly want to do it because, you have, there's one thing to meet someone, and I think tolerating someone is a negative because I could be in the room with you, Chirag, or Adam, and I could be on my best behavior knowing that 2 hours later I'm going to leave and I won't see you again. And I'll just put up a nice front in front of you. But when you're accommodating someone, people can tell. When you're asking questions about them and you actually show signs that you actually care, that's different. Those are connections and relationships that you made that are cross cultural. And when someone's good at that, you add your pedigree and have that skill set, you'll be attractive to a lot of different companies. You'll be attractive within your own company in different divisions because now you put yourself in a position where your character can scale. You talk about scaling a business where you're scaling your personality and you can deal with different cultures. And I think that keeps me awake, and that's something that I work on. I mean, I just came back from Brussels last night having a few issues dealing cross culturally, and you get through them. But that is so critical to everyone's future.
I want to stick on that subject a little bit longer, and then specifically of the idea of making yourself attractive. So, in our space, in our company, so we obviously do a lot around media and branding, and everything from podcasts, books. I mean, we help a lot of people with, I say, levels of making themselves attractive in terms of their branding side of things. But I think you're using the word maybe in a deeper manner than just branding. Can you drill a little bit deeper into what you think or what you feel it is to make yourself attractive to the marketplace?
Well, if someone's going to, you look at how what's happening in the collegiate realms and our college institutions across the country. They're dropping a lot of college are dropping the SAT scores. They don't care about that too much anymore. Why? Because they're looking for character more so than academic prowess. That's a part of it, but you can see that once they get into the school, they want to know the diverse background that someone has: sports, education, book clubs, activities. They want to know that when someone hits the wall, when they come to their institution, that they're going to come off the wall and they're going to continue to progress forward and not just fall down and fall apart and and not know what to do. So when I say making yourself attractive, it's because added sets based on engagement, based on dealing with people. And we're in a society today where that's becoming less and less because of all technology and what we're doing. So as the technology rises and we're having these fake friends on social media and everything else that's going on, while that's going at a all-time high, engagement and interpersonal interaction is starting to slide. So you're looking for that now. If across the landscape now in the country, it's hard for organizations to hire youth because they're just not built the way we were at one given time. And a lot of them are not going toward being CPA. They're doing more creative stuff. So the workforce is in trouble in a lot of different industries. So while you see that happening, those of us who might be a little older have more opportunities now to go back and work because of our experience and our life skills. So there's a lot that's happening. And I think the more global you are in your thinking, the better off you are. And now the last point I'll make on that is when you say, someone who says they are into different cultures and they're diverse. Well, let me test and see. Let me go to your home and go to a party at your home. Are you living a diverse lifestyle? You can say you're into diversity, but you're not. If you're not living a diverse lifestyle, are you really a diverse person? That's key, because if you can engage in different cultures like that, again, you'll be more attractive in the future for a lot of different companies in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, and that's on the personal side of things. Is there any insight into that same concept of attractiveness for your business, or for your how we used to have, I forget what the name of the awards were, but like best place to work or this or that, and now, and especially one of the things you bring up is the industries that are maybe lacking, or not, I shouldn't say lacking, but are really in a talent, having trouble attaining younger talent. Or is there things that go into making maybe your business or your industry a little bit more attractive and receptive to new ways to work?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. You see a lot of mid-level companies that are looking to go the next level, looking for an exit potentially, or looking to get bought out or some sort of merger. The pool of companies to be able to do that needs to expand today. There's more capital coming from different sources to get that exit. So again, now when we're talking about what I said from personally into business, your business has to have the ability to work cross culturally. Your platforms have got to be able to extend into different markets beyond our borders a lot of times. Those companies, again, we use the word attractive, those companies are attractive. Today, you have opportunities where a lot of our family offices here in the United States have no idea of what it's like to invest in Africa. Why? We've all listened to the propaganda. I've been to Africa plenty of times, and Africa is a place right now where a lot of countries around the world are looking at Africa for its solvency because of all of its rich minerals. The age population is young. There's so much going on there, but we don't know anything about Africa. If a company is able to work with other companies to show them and teach them about some of the opportunities there are for your company to do business cross culturally in Africa and the UAE or any other places apart in the world, you expand your business in those ways, and you need people to do it. But again, that's what we're looking at in the future, to be able to expand your business cross culturally and to be able to sell your products and services in those areas as well. Sports companies do it all the time. Look at Nike's global, the NBA is
Mm-hmm.
global. Sports companies are global all the time because sport is something that I don't care what age you are, what ethnic background you are, you can all cheer for the same team,
Mm.
right? Now, apply that to a business. That's what I'm talking about. If you can apply that concept to a business, then you have a very strong business.
Yeah, I love that. I want to. First off, I can talk to you all day, and I got a bunch more questions I can ask. But I know that there's probably a couple people listening right now that want to start chiming in with questions. So I do want to really take a moment and open up the floor as well. If anybody has a question or for Charles, if not, I can ask more questions. And everybody knows that's on this call. But anybody have anything for Charles? I don't want to hog the mic.
Hey, Charles. Great listening to you. This is Mark Weithorn hailing to you from Miami Beach, Florida. Love your resume. Very impressive. I can relate to what you're saying about entrepreneurship. People sometimes they look at you and they go, oh my God, look how many businesses this person started. But they don't look at they look at the failures that you had, and they don't look at the successes that you've had. The famous example is Thomas Edison. How many light bulbs did he have to
Right.
create before he came up with the one? One of the things that I do, I work with realtors, and one of the things I do to give back is I teach classes to realtors, on how to do business. And one of them is surviving the first 6 months as a realtor. And when you take the course and the test to become a realtor, they don't teach you how to be an entrepreneur. And I say to them, you have to change your mindset, because you're not clocking into a job where your boss is going, well, here are your tasks for the day, go do them. Now you're in business for yourself, and you have to do it on your own. You have to imagine it on your own. You have to develop it on your own.
Right. Well, and you're absolutely right. Just for in particular for that industry, being a realtor, because that's your own book of business, and you're going to thrive or die based on your effort and your energy and what you bring to your job every day for yourself and getting clients and making those sales. Earlier when you spoke and you were talking about entrepreneurship, you made me think about the a person's ability to want to thrive. At the end of the day, and you talk about real estate, if you don't have that attitude to want to thrive and move forward and push yourself, you're just not gonna it's not gonna work for you. And in the industry that you just coined for that, being a realtor, that's as good as it gets in being an entrepreneur. I mean, you might have some resources and support from the back office, but very minimal, because it's all going to be based on what you do and what you bring to work every day. And if you don't bring it, you're not going to fulfill any sales or anything that you're trying to do if you don't have that proper attitude.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could just change the topic just for 1 second and talk about athletes. I mean, we're coming around, especially with like the NCAA or the Olympics came around a while ago, about 10 years ago, allowing students or non-professionals to start earning money based on their likeness, they call it. And I feel that for generations, we abused a lot of athletes, especially in college, by not paying them, by not allowing them to earn a few dollars so they can, buy a suit. Or if someone does buy them a suit, they can get in trouble because who gave you that suit? So I think we're coming around as a society is saying, okay, we need to be a little bit more fair with some of these athletes. And then the next step, once they do become professionals, if they do become professionals, is teaching them how to be responsible with the fame, with their money, so their money will last, because their athletic careers are usually short-lived. I'd love your comments on this.
Wow, you just started 2 more shows with both of those questions. I'll try to be brief. First, on the NIL, the name, image, and likeness. So yes, that's a area where many coaches have made 10, 20, $30 million shoe deals at the school and has imposed their contracts onto the players because they had to wear them at the school. And the players was the one that were actually branding the shoes for the college and for the coaches, and it goes on and on. So the fact that they're able to do that today, I think, is great. They still today need to figure out how to put some guardrails around the industry, because it's like the Wild West right now. Anybody can do an NIL deal. If I went to the University of Pittsburgh, if I wanted tomorrow to give some money to a player to go to keep them in school or do whatever, I can. But there's got to be some guardrails around that, because it's kind of out of control. It's good for the players, but the direction where it can go can be kind of tough. So don't want to get into that too deep, but the bottom line is it had to change, and it's good that happened. Now, your other question, based on you're talking about players and coming into money, and that's such a tough question, because when you're young and all you've done is focused on your ability to get to where you are, the moment you lose that edge, there's another 40, 50 kids in that one position that's trying to get your spot. So you have to focus on that. Now, the people around the industry make money off the athletes being blind. They're not trying to get them to see things the right way, because they create a codependent relationship with athletes where the athletes need them. And by the time the athlete understands the game, he's out the game. So it's we can go on and on about that subject matter, but I'll say it this way. The reason why I'm in the family office space is to help change the trajectory and how the industry is with athletes, because in the family office space, you have one CIO, and that CIO takes care of the family, takes care of everything, and knows everything about you. Where in the sports industry, you have the agent, you have the manager, you have the accountant, you have all these people getting a percent here and there. And it's incestuous, because I can be the agent and my brother-in-law could be the accountant. It's so incestuous. And when people say, how did this guy lose this money? And they blame it on the player, but they're not blaming it on his representative. You don't hear anything about the representative who was kind of there. Now it falls on the player. So that's a double-edged sword, and we could talk about that in a whole nother show.
Thank you.
Who else liked to chime in with the question for Charles?
Well, I'll jump in. Hi, Charles. This is Denley McIntosh out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I remember memories of you playing against our lowly Raptors at one point. So kind of just conjure up some good memories back in the day there. Yeah, my business is into really leadership through building the ability to understand cultures and the different backgrounds and be able to connect with each other, starting from the C-suite down. So I train executives to take the learning with me and then bring that learning all the way down to the front line, because there's no point delegating that learning to the front line only or to mid management when the person at the top hasn't changed from the inside out, because culture change starts from the top. So with that sort of mindset in place, and you talk about this idea of really this sort of CQs, this cultural intelligence, one, have leaders really taking it seriously to imbibe in that, in terms of your crossing paths, because everyone's doing the whole D&I track and saying, yeah, this is good, but my fear, maybe unsettledness, probably on the mild side, but fear probably on the worst side, that leaders see this cultural intelligence, embracing the diversity as an initiative, as a project, but not really seeing this as a lifestyle, a mindset shift. And in order to bring the culture change that's necessary to make this place a better place to work, they're kind of delegating it down. So do you see leaders changing their mindset and saying, it got to start with me? And number one. And number two, what have you done to really stay culturally fit and be able to get this sort of new environment of the different cultures in the workplace? And have you found a culture that's probably the most, maybe more challenging to work with, just because you're coming from two different worldviews, two different perspectives of the way of living? So it's kind of a multi-pronged question, but your thought about executives and culture change.
So first, equity and inclusion. I found that most leaders that understand that best are those that have a participative style of management, because when you're trying to accomplish a goal and you're leaning on the various people around you, you kind of have a diverse mindset just with that thinking. I'll give you an example. I played for two great coaches, Pat Riley and Greg Popovich. Pat Riley was more of a dictator. Greg Popovich was more participative style. And you see the success that they had and how Pat Riley had to change from that style. You know, Pat Riley, you could say to the team, look at that, guys, look out the window. Tell me everything you see. And it could be New York City. And guys would say, look at that skyscraper, look at the color of that building, and this is brick and this is that. And at the end of the day, he could write down everything. And Pat Riley says, come on, guys, what do you mean? You didn't see this? Greg Popovich, you can say the same thing, and that you can name all these things, and he'll say, you know what? You're all correct. And I think we'll stop right there, because I think you're all correct, and let's move forward. So you have a participative style. It works. Now, the second part of your question was based on what? I lost my train of thought. The second part was...
the second part in terms of this idea of cultural intelligence.
Yes.
And yeah.
So I've traveled the world, and the more I've traveled, the more I learned about myself. I have a zillion stories to tell you about experiences I had in China, in Kaohsiung, Taiwan, and I've been to Korea. If guys don't know that, I've been to North and South Korea. I've been to North Korea. So I've traveled all over the world and have done many things with different cultures. One of the toughest cultures I dealt with, and I failed miserably, but I stuck to it and I'm fine today, is in the UAE, in Dubai. This is a culture that does business exactly the opposite of what we do in America. And I come to understand this is why we don't do a lot together with that culture. It's direct opposite. I give you an example. Their philosophy is, let's not talk about business. Let me get to know you. And after we talk about that, then they expect you to trust them right away in business, right? So full trust, let them guide you, let them lead you. And in our philosophy, trust is proven, trust is earned. And when we go through documents, you want to interrogate the reality of the document to find out what's right and what's not right. And you want to ask a lot of questions. Well, when you do that, that's a kind of a negative and a sort of a slap in the face of their cultures. Like, why are you doing that? Did we do something wrong? So I failed miserably, and I stuck to it. and I learned their culture and I became adaptable. And now that I think that I'm able to conduct business in their culture, I've gotten a lot better, which helped me in a little incident I had in Brussels. So yeah, it's important to understand cultures, and like anything else, if you learn how to do business cross culturally, it's only going to help you, and just even your personal relationships, it's only going to help. There, I'll say this last thing. Guy by the last name of Kahneman in 1972, he was an economist that won the Nobel Prize for doing a study finding out that humans base their decisions on emotion. Now, we were always taught you don't make decisions on emotion, but in all actuality, the emotion is the first thing that happens that causes you to move toward a decision. And then we think about and rationalize and go through the process and the execution, but the decision is based on emotion. We are human beings. We're all based on emotion. Our interaction is emotion. Our engagement is emotion. And that was the piece that I had to learn doing business cross culturally, that I had to be a little vulnerable and open up myself to let people see, because people are smart. They can tell whether you're interested or not. And once I began to do that, that opened up a whole new world for me.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting take. And what culture do you find that you got to wear your heart on your sleeve, or we're not doing business with each other, versus maybe a more stoic, keep things close to the vest, that I don't need to know that side of you and we can do business that way? Are there what culture kind of do the opposite maybe?
You're trying to set up Charles for some stereotypes here. Come on, Denley.
No, but
come on,
I'm
you and that,
not
Charles.
I know, Adam. I'm trying not to go there, but
all right. Let's keep okay.
No,
but
I think, but this is known. This is known. The Swedish are non-confrontational. I mean, that's a known fact. There's even a phrase. I'm trying to think of the phrase where you stay neutral. It's the culture, and I can't remember the phrase. But anyway, it's pretty don't want to say no, but we'll try to give you an answer that's like a no. And if you're a type of person that is very direct and you just want to get to the bottom line, you rather hear a no. And it's okay for somebody to tell you no. But when working with a culture that's not like that, that can be very challenging in doing business, because the culture is never going to put you in a confrontational position. And what's confrontational to you is not confrontational to them. And so it's very difficult, very tough. So I've been in some situations like that. But yeah, don't want to go down the path of
they sound like this.
But that's a known. That's a
and
known
the word,
I
Charles, I'll spell it. I read a book on it once, and it's like Heiga or something like that. It's basic. I think,
Heidegger?
Yeah, there you go. That's the one. What is it? There it is. I don't know how to say it. I knew I would butcher it, but there you go.
Philosopher. No, I'm saying, Charles, that sounds like Canadians. So at least I know Swedish and Canadians, and I'm Canadian, so I can speak for that.
I was about to say that.
I don't know.
You must know better than I.
So we have time for maybe about one more, maybe two max. We normally keep these to a solid hour, but I don't want to cut it abruptly for sure. So I just want to get some context on time though. Does anybody else have another one they want to chime in with?
I'll throw something out there. My name's Joe Glazer. Charles, thanks a lot for joining us. I definitely remember watching you play. So thank you for your time joining us today and sharing all this with us.
Thanks.
You'd mentioned something early on kind of about, the next generation, next future. And I want to know what your predictions are and what you think of it. I have been really scared, almost disappointed in a way, to where I keep wondering, who's going to replace me? Who you and I probably have a lot of overlap. I deal with a lot of family offices, and just for building, I build things, and then I also buy properties with a bunch of people, and look kind of like small investments. I go and buy a distressed property with a bunch of different people, and then turn around and sell it later on.
Sure.
and work with lots of trust and stuff. And I got to tell you, I don't see the commitment to excellence, the aggressiveness, the hardcore driven ambition, pretty much all the things that are requisite for a successful entrepreneur. I want to know what you think about that, and where you see things going.
Joe, I've had some very interesting conversations during my travels with government officials and C-level executives, and we talk about the world and children and years and what's going on. I'm coming to understand that it's a US problem. When you look at I saw a hot map in 2010 of Africa and the US's footprint business wise in Africa. And in 2010, the US had 3/4 and China had
That's one
1/4.
thing
This was
I
just
definitely wanted to mention with you as a follow-up to your Africa comment, because I do a lot of business over there myself. And
yeah.
but please continue. I'm sorry. So sorry. Go.
Yeah. So, and this is just with China. So then in that same hot map in 2020, China has 4/5 and the US has 1/5 in a 10-year period. So what does that tell you? While we're in the US, we haven't in the last 10, 15 years been strategizing globally to grow the country. We're dealing with so many side issues. We're no longer top 20 in education. We're no longer top 20 in technology. We're no longer top 20 in literacy and math and science. We just fell right off the map. So, we're kind of spiraling downward while some other countries are going up. I mean, we're still writing checks. I was just in Brussels. I just got back tonight and I'm in a restaurant and the guy doesn't even pull out a phone I mean not a phone, a credit card machine, digital machine to the table, which a lot we don't have here to put my credit card in. He does his phone. I tapped my card to his phone and that was it. And he said, "Do you need a receipt? I can print it and go back and get it." It's on his cell phone. It's an app. We are so far behind digitally. It's ridiculous to the rest of the world. It is so sad. And you wouldn't know that unless you travel and see what the heck is out there. So when you talk about our future here, just in this country, it's scary because we're not advanced as we think we are. We're actually out of the loop with the rest of the world, and I don't know how we get back in it. I really don't know, and that's the struggle, and that's what I see, and it just doesn't look good.
I totally agree wholeheartedly. One thing and one reason why I'm drawn so much to Africa in particular. Again, you're totally right. Most Americans, don't, other than knowing the general shape of it, don't know much about Africa, and have totally wrong, misconceptions
Yeah,
about it. But it is going to be the most urbanized continent by the next decade. And
just
people
to
under
take a
30.
sports view. I'm
No, go
sorry,
ahead.
Joe.
Please go ahead.
Just to take a sports view, right? The NBA goes to Africa and does a joint venture with the Basketball Africa League. That joint venture was worth $1 billion before one game is played. $1 billion.
Easily.
They got all the darling investors from all over. They got Goldman, they got BlackRock, President Obama. They got all these people that invested in it very quickly, right? And people say, why? You got a league of 12 teams, 6 of them don't have arenas. But here's the catch. Here in the US, we got 300 reps supporting the team, and the team is worth north of 2 billion. Over in Africa, you got 8 million people supporting a team, and they're just now getting their arenas and building the restaurants and all that stuff around them. But just like we have here, the numbers in the future of that league and what the impact it's having in these countries is staggering. Is staggering. There's so many opportunities over there versus other places in the world right now. You know, the French are in Senegal. I mean, you can just go on and on. There's 54 countries over there, 54 countries. And people don't even know there's 54 countries. They just say Africa, but they don't know there's 54 countries with 54 different
That's right.
cultures. So it's an amazing place. The opportunities, the beaches, and all. It's incredible, and there's a lot going on.
But Charles, one thing I would say that the Americans or the country has over all the other countries, it is still the idea of the American dream.
Oh no,
And even though people, you can say the population, the children here are not as advanced, but the intrigue of people wanting to come to the United States, because all intents and purposes, they say the immigration rate is highest with the United States versus other countries in the world. So
100%.
I think that's what makes the difference for you guys.
No, 100%, 100%. I don't doubt that. I'm talking, 20 years down the road, how you see things starting to change. But no, you're 100% right. Look, I had when I was in the first day I got in Brussels, I went to a restaurant, and third time this has happened in my entire life. I had an allergic reaction to something I ate. I don't know what it is. Third time in my life, and my top lip blew up so tight and big, it was like people look at me and be like, "Oh boy." I couldn't find Benadryl or anything equivalent to it. So you know, the medicine, the practices, the coming here, there's no doubt. I agree with you 100%. This is the place to be. But when you talk about the 20-year and looking down the road, what the signs that you see today, I just don't know what it's going to be like 20, 25 years from now.
Yeah.
So you're as scared as me. Good to know. I think that's.
No, I am, Joe. I am. We don't pay attention to what's in
Right.
front of us. We're distracted, but there's a lot that's happening that we're just not paying attention
Yep.
to.
Couldn't agree more.
You talk about, global warming, right? Global warming, right? The impact of global warming is different for other countries around the world. For example, Africa can care
That's right.
less about the glacier, you know, and we're having these conversations, but we hear it here, but we're not hearing what Russia thinks about global warming or other countries. We're in our own little sphere and how it's impacting us, but we're saying global and we think that's the whole world. There's so many things that are happening that you see. It's like, wow, what's going to happen in the
Decadence.
future? Yeah, right, Joe. Who
I
said
said that.
decadence?
Yeah, it's decadence, and we have that. I call global warming a luxury opinion, because you're absolutely right. Nobody in Kigali cares about
Right.
anything to do with global warming, but they definitely care about keeping their house warm. And if that means
Right.
they're going to burn coal or whatever, then that's fine. That is a luxury opinion of a decadent country.
Yeah, I think everybody has their own impact on what's happening with global warming, and everybody's not at the table being
That's right.
heard. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if Chirag's going to be available to do the sign off right now. I think he might be in a noisy place. If he's not, Chirag, you're welcome to come back. I know you're tuning in, but if not, I'll just do the sign off. So Charles, first off, really, really, really enjoyed this. So thank you for coming on the platform, and it's always great working with you. And just want to say, really, thanks for coming on. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Adam, and I enjoyed the dialogue. It was a good conversation, good questions. I enjoyed it. Have me back sometime. I'm all for it.
You know that's gonna happen. We'll be tapping you as it comes on, and I didn't do any spoilers, but I know we're working on some things, and I've been getting the word on what's going on, and I love what's developing. So I didn't spoiler anything on here, but trust me, it was hard not to spoiler the project because I can't help it. I get excited, man. Well, but on that note, so for everybody listening to this again, Mission Matters, we do this every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Twitter Spaces. The recordings for this are all posted as well on our website, so www.missionmatters.com. And then the podcast, of course, just type in Mission Matters on any platform and you'll see it there. Hit that subscribe button. And we appreciate everybody's time and everybody showing up today. So Denley, Joe, Mark, Tony, everybody else that was able to chime in. Thanks again for coming out, and see everyone next week who comes back. Have a great week.